Everyone to today's presentation. As Ashley mentioned, it is AutoCAD's tips for every user that they should know, but after today, all of you will know. I want to say thank you to Dan Rosenberg running the Q&A in the background, so if anything goes on during the presentation, you can enter questions into the Q&A log and he'll get those addressed as quickly as possible. So now you should be hearing me. This is what this particular slide is for, is make sure everybody is aware that I'm speaking and you should be hearing. But it also shows that Q&A panel that I mentioned. So anything comes up during the webinar, any issues or anything like that, you could put it in there and Dan will try to help you out as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll use that interface for the Q&A at the end of the presentation. So real quick, we've got a lot to get through. I want to run through some minimal PowerPoint, as minimal as possible. Little introduction on Hagerman. We do have offices coast to coast. You see we are heavily focused around the Midwest area, but we do cover the entire United States. Our field technical staff, like myself, like Dan, combined we have over 175 years of experience. We've also got over 30 years of experience with software sales and implementation of the software. So it's not just selling it, it's also helping you getting it installed, up and running. So we're going to launch the first poll real quick. We've only got 2 polls, and the first one's going to start out of when did you start using AutoCAD? So let me get that launched real quick. And we'll wait and let most of the audience get their answers put in. So when did you start using AutoCAD? Looking at 2020 to 2024, 2015 to 19, 2010 to 2014, or before 2010? Dan, do you want to chime in and let everybody know your age of when you started using AutoCAD?
Yeah, I think I started using it version 20, or 2000 actually, yeah, version 2000. So yeah, dating myself there, but I'm sure we have some even before that on the line here today.
Yeah, let's talk about dating. I started using it with release 10 for DOS. So what is that, 1992 ballpark, 1993, somewhere around there, maybe even before then, probably 91.
Yeah.
All right, so let's see. I can't. There's the poll section. All right, so it looks like we got about 84% voted, and I'll close the polls and we'll look at that real quick. And how do I show those? There it goes, share. Oh yeah, this got a lot easier than it used to be. All right, so as you see, the bulk overwhelmingly before 2010. So we've got a little bit heavier skew of long user base, and that's good, but we've also got some new user bases in there. 2020 to 2024, we got some younglings that are learning it. That's pretty good. We got one more poll question real quick. The next one is, what version of AutoCAD are you currently using? We'll go ahead and get that one launched. Of course, with Dan and I, we're in a unique boat. We have to use a lot of versions. Obviously, we've got the 2024 installed, but I think the oldest that I have installed right now on one of these machines laying around here somewhere, the oldest one I've got currently available is 2018. Anything back before that is officially unsupported by Autodesk. So we got about 75% reporting in. Looks like overwhelmingly everyone is around the 2022 to 2024 range. So I'll go ahead and close that poll and share that real quick just so everybody sees it. So nobody's using, okay, sorry, it says 3% or less is using 2015 or older. The good news is everything you're going to see today applies to all of the versions that everybody is responding to. I mean, we're going way back on the majority of these tips and tricks that you're going to see. All right, so that's one thing about AutoCAD. You know, there's been a lot of performance enhancements over the years, a ton. And with AutoCAD being 41 years old this year, that's an old piece of software. It's been around a long time, but it is capable of so much. There are enhancements introduced over the years that, yeah, we'll start using them right out of the box, and then 2 or 3 versions later, they've kind of faded out to the back shelf and gotten some dust on them. So what kind of enhancements and tips and tricks and workflows are there that we have forgotten about? That's huge, because they're still there and you can still gain productivity from using them. So I think it's the last or second to the last PowerPoint slide. Is this the specialized tool sets? Are we talking AutoCAD electrical or mechanical or civil or architecture? No, this has nothing to do with the specialized tool sets. We're talking core AutoCAD for today's presentation. So where do these apply? These apply to your vanilla AutoCAD and your AutoCAD LT. Everything you see, with the exception of one command, which I will call out, everything you see will apply to both of those products and the verticals as well. So if you're using AutoCAD Mechanical, these also apply to the vanilla profile of that mechanical. I've tried to put them into categories. There's a lot of fuzziness with this. There's things that could exist in configuration as well as interface as well as command options. So just don't take these as carved in stone. They kind of fluctuate a little bit. But there are 3 things, if you can jot it down now on a notepad, post it, whatever, 3 commands that you really need to memorize and use these. And I'm going to be frequently plugging these in during the presentation. Those are your AutoCAD options. A couple of ways you can get to it, which I'll go through, but one of the quickest is typing in OP and enter, and that takes you into the options. Also, the CUI for the customized user interface. Simply type that in, CUI, press enter, takes you to that dialog. As well as REGEN, which is short for regenerate. Also, you could just type in RE. By default, that is a regen operation. Similar to redraw, but more oomph behind it. And 10 extra points to anybody who can name what the picture is on the right, which, based on the previous poll question, I say the majority of our audience is going to get it. All right, so let's get into the demo. There's a lot to cover, and I'm going to try to cover everything as best I can. I may move a little bit too fast to get it all squeezed in, and I may have to omit an item or two to fit us inside the hour, but there's a lot. So the first thing I want to talk about is the setup, configuration, and the management aspect of it. And one of the things that comes up, not as much now as it used to, but is arc and circle smoothness. So you'll notice as I zoom in on some of these arcs, instead of looking smooth and contoured like they should, they're very jagged. If I'm zoom in on this one, it's a very jagged display. There's a couple of things that can clarify or rectify this situation. One of the things is the graphics acceleration or the hardware acceleration. So if I go to graphics performance, I can turn on the hardware acceleration, and for the most part that will circumvent this situation. However, we have seen on some of the Intel cards that come with a lot of laptops tends to cause issues. The Intel cards are not a very good card to run any kind of CAD software on. So turning that on sometimes can cause some problems. So there's one option, but it may not be applicable. The other option is in the AutoCAD options. So I'm going to go into the AutoCAD options. A couple ways to get there. OP and enter will take you to the options. You can also right click in the command line, go to options, and up in the application button down at the bottom you will see options. Any of those are going to get you there. So in the AutoCAD options, on the display tab, upper right-hand corner, there is a value for controlling arc and circle smoothness. The default for this value is 100, and 100 gives you what you see on the screen, the very jagged circle. If I change this to 1,000 or even as high as 10,000, I'm not even sure if there's a limit. I've never gone higher than 10,000 or never had a need to go higher than 10,000. But even going up to 1,000 and hitting apply, you'll notice that circle smooths out tremendously. So that's one option you might want to look at if you cannot use the hardware acceleration. The other option, if I go back and tweak that down to 100, when I zoom in, the other control you have is to use the REGEN command. And what REGEN does, again, RE is your quickest way to get there, or you can type out REGEN. What it does is it regenerates the graphics, and based on your current zoom level, it runs that smoothness count, that 100, at the current zoom level. So when you're zoomed in closer, you're going to have a smoother arc. Zoom out and run a REGEN, it'll get jagged again. So there's a third option to tweak that and control that and change it. Something else to look at, let's say we're going to be setting up our template. We're going with a new template. Maybe we've got 10, 15, 200, 2,000 drawings out there with various settings kind of scattered around and things are different. We're going to unify into a common template. Well, how do we get all these settings from all these other drawings into this template? What's the easiest way to do that? Various ways you can do it, but probably the easiest way is using the Design Center. So on the View ribbon tab down here on the Palettes panel, the clipboard is the XREF manager. If you go to the left of that, that's the Design Center palette. Now, the first time you launch this thing, it's going to be a little bit slow, but after that, it pops up really quick. What the Design Center allows you to do, it gives you kind of a Windows File Explorer interface. So you can browse locally, you can browse out on a network, wherever you need to look. And you can find a drawing, a specific file, and on that file, you get access to some of the contents of that file, such as the various blocks that that file may contain, or different dimension styles, different layers that you might have. Table styles, text styles, you get the idea. If I look in this particular drawing that I'm working on, the layers that I have are only center lines, column pillars, and dimensions. If I look at the various blocks that I only have 2 blocks. There's nothing else in there. So what I can do is I can go to this source library drawing, go to my blocks, and I can say, okay, what are the different blocks I might want in my template? Okay, well, if I'm doing architectural, then I'm going to want the compass or the navigational star, and you just drag and drop to put that in there. You might also need a center line marker, drag and drop that one. Light switches, outlets. Let's see what else. Title blocks, there's another good one. We're going to need a title block, so let's drop a title block in there. Now, when you drop in a block, if it has any attributes, it's going to prompt you for those attributes. You don't have to fill them out right now. You're just getting that block definition embedded into your new drawing. So the Design Center allows that drag and drop capability for any of these items. Same thing goes for layers. So maybe I need, say, a viewport, a text, hatching, hidden lines, object lines, construction. Let's see, anything else I might want to throw in there? Yeah, that'll be enough. All I can do is drag, drop. They now become part of the drawing that I'm looking at. So my layers have expanded to have more layers. If I look at the various blocks I have in here now, I've got a lot more pieces of block geometry available. So the Design Center is a very handy tool to essentially rob from other drawings to get them into here. Looking more at the layer situation. Let me just go ahead and clean this up a little bit. So when you're setting up your layers or configuring your layers, one capability that a lot of users are not aware of is the control that you have over the layers. So with that control, of course, you got your name, your whether it's turned on, frozen, locked, color, line type, things like that. But you can also set a layer to not print. Good examples of when this is applicable: construction lines. You don't necessarily want those printed out, right? If they do accidentally print, you could set it to a very minuscule line type, like a dotted line type, so it doesn't really show up very well. Viewports, there's another layer that you're going to have the viewport border if you're using paper space, but you don't want it to plot. So all you have to simply do is click on that printer icon, and that keeps that layer or any objects on that layer from plotting. You will still see them on the display, you just won't see them on the paper. Let's go back and look at that title block situation real quick. Here's another item that comes up. So when I drop in that title block, of course, with block geometry, you can configure it to have attributes. And you'll notice some of these attributes, I can plug stuff in. So say 1/16 of an inch equals 1 foot. I can type that in. Other items, however, they're kind of grayed out. I can't directly type into them. I can double click and get to what I need to, but these are actually pulling from the drawing fields. And that's something that you can do with any piece of text. It does not have to be necessarily in a block object, but a title block is probably the most common way you're going to use this. So when I say okay, zoom in down here, you'll notice a lot of these fields are kind of highlighted gray. The drawing number, notice it's already got the drawing name in there. There's no title description, there's no drawn by or anything like that. These items are being pulled from the drawing fields. Where do you get those? If you go to the application button, so that's the big A in the upper left, come down to drawing utilities, go to drawing properties. In the drawing properties, these are the fields that you can use. You can populate these pieces of metadata, really, and pull that into your drawing. So title, subject, author, I'm just going to put my initials in here. Comments, we're going to call it the setup drawing. Statistics or custom, you can pull any of that information into your drawing as a field, and you can add your own. That's what these custom ones are. Various materials, alternate materials, maybe say where you buy something from, like a fab shop that's making it, or even an alternate fab shop, vendor, supplier, things like that. You can add whatever you want to add. When I say okay, and I type REGEN, notice the drawn populates and the title populates. Again, they're pulling from those fields associated with the drawing properties. Continuing on down with drawing properties, or really drawing utilities. If I go back to the drawing utilities flyout, there's a couple of other commands that come up in here. One is purge. What purge allows you to do is it allows you to clean up your drawing. So you might actually have a drawing it's mostly what you need, but there's a lot of bits scattered around that you don't need that are embedded in the drawing. There might be 15 or so blocks that you don't need. There could be 20 or so layers that you don't need. How do you clean all that up efficiently? That's where the purge command comes in. So with the purge, you have two options. You can show the items that you can purge, or show the items that you cannot purge. Kind of a good status check. And the reason that you won't be able to purge an item is because it's used somewhere out here in the drawing area. If you look at the items you can purge, it gives you a nice breakdown of what you can get rid of. Various items in here like blocks, layers, things like that. You can individually pick and choose what items you might want to get rid of. Or if you want to, you can say purge everything. So you can either purge what's selected or purge everything that's not used. So very handy way of cleaning up your drawing. Back to drawing utilities again. If you've got a drawing that is damaged, you try to open it and it says there's problems with this drawing, can't retrieve all of the database schema, things like that, you can recover most drawings using the recover utility. So when I choose recover, come out here and grab a drawing that has some issues with it. When I open that, it processes that drawing and then gives me some feedback. Did it find any errors? Did it fix any errors? And were any of the objects erased? There's a ton of stuff in the code that this recovery utility looks for. So when I hit close, it will open it up. Now, if the recovery or if the file was damaged severely, you could actually have items that are missing. You could have, you know, part of a wall that's missing that should be there, so you have to go in and fix that. But you'll recover the bulk of your drawing. Before you get to that point, if you want, you can also run a health check on your drawing that you're looking at. That's done using the audit utility, also under the drawing utilities flyout. The way the audit works is it prompts you, do you want to fix any errors? So if you basically just wanted to see how many errors it finds or if it finds any at all, or you could have it automatically fix the errors. The feedback for the audit is in the history window. If you press F2, that brings up the command history for AutoCAD, and you can see the results of that audit. So for this particular one, no errors were found, so no errors were fixed. Another very handy utility in a multi-user, especially a network situation. How many times have you opened a drawing and AutoCAD says, this is read-only, I can't give you write access to this. Somebody has it, but it doesn't really tell you who has it. It just says it's read-only. How do you find out who has that drawing so you can go talk to them, tell them to close it, because you got to make a change to it? There is a command called WHOHAS. With that command, you basically browse to that drawing, open it up, and it will tell you if someone has it open and preventing you access. It'll tell you that user listed here. Nobody has this one open, so it says user unknown. All right, now we're going to the interface. That was the setup and configuration portion of it. We're going to look at the interface options. So one thing that comes up is in the options on the selection tab, you have control over your pick box size. And this can actually make life a little easier or a little bit more difficult. I've seen a lot of new installs show up with a very small pick box, or somebody changed it to this and didn't know how to change it back. It was done accidentally. What this controls is when you start any command that has a select objects prompt, so something like erase or move or copy. When you start that command, you get this teeny tiny little select box. I can't do anything with that. I can't really see what I'm picking on or what I am on. So one of the first things you can do, come back into your options on the selection tab and resize that pick box to something that's a lot more comfortable for you. Now, when I start the erase, I get a much larger pick box. I can actually see what I'm picking and where I'm selecting. The other thing with the interface is this is kind of a workflow situation. Don't work 10,000 feet up. If you got to work with fine details, get in there, zoom in there. The nice thing about AutoCAD is zoom is a transparent command. It works inside and during every command. You can pan around, you can zoom in closer, you can zoom out, and you're still in your command. So try to get closer, get that model geometry bigger to where you can select it more easily and work with it more easily. Another thing with the interface is accessing your object snaps. So hopefully everybody is familiar with creating lines, circles, rectangles, things like that, and using running OSNAPs to snap to the endpoint or to the midpoint or to the center of geometry. Those are controlled, they are assigned and controlled in your status bar icons. So across the bottom, one of these icons is titled Object Snap. If I right click on that, every one of these that has a check mark, that is your running OSNAP. That means any one of them that are selected, whenever you start like a line command or a circle command, the running OSNAP, that's what AutoCAD is looking for. It's looking for those selected types of snaps: endpoint, midpoint, circle, or center, intersection, things like that. There's also snap overrides. So that comes in a situation like this. If I start a circle object and I want to attach a line segment to one of the quadrants of that circle. Well, when I hover on that circle, the only thing it selects or highlights is my center. I don't need center, I need the quadrant. So I could come down here and I could add it to my running OSNAPs. That can throw off my workflow a little bit later. I could also type in the first 3 letters of the object snap. So QUA for quadrant. That works. And it will highlight that quadrant. There's another way to do it. When you start your command and you're ready to have a different snap, hold down the Shift key and right click will bring up your snap override menu. So from here, I could pick quadrant, immediately go to quadrant. As soon as I pick that, it resets and goes back to the running OSNAP. So quadrant is no longer a selection. If I want it again, Shift right click, quadrant again. So you can use that Shift right click anytime you are creating or moving and copying objects. Anytime an OSNAP is applicable to the situation, you can use it. Another one for the interface. So one way that AutoCAD is configured out of the box, the layers control is on the home ribbon tab. On the layers panel, you've got the pull down to show you all the different layers to work with. If I want to see what layer this object is on, I can do a grip select. Maybe I want to change it to a different layer. Come back over here to the home tab, pull that down and put it on the furniture layer, or maybe miscellaneous. The problem is you could be on the insert ribbon or the annotate or any one of these other ribbons using these commands. So to go to another ribbon tab and go to another section, there's travel time involved. So you've got some downtime there. To make it easier, you can take that pull down, right click on it, add it to your quick access toolbar, and that puts it up here at the top. That way, no matter what ribbon or command you're on, you always have access to your layers pull down. Streamlines the workflow quite a bit. Another streamline capability is using the properties palette. Now, if you don't see the properties palette, you can go to the view ribbon tab. On the palettes section, there is a properties palette icon, brings it up here. You can float this, you can dock it left or right. You can even float it to another screen if you have multiple monitors. The properties palette is extremely handy because it gives you a ton of information about whatever you have selected. So if you have a line segment selected, for example, it tells you what kind of object, behaviors, general behaviors of that object, and geometric information about that object. So I can tell the length of that line, the angle. If I look at that circle, same thing here. The center point location, radius, diameter, circumference, area, and layer information. Depending on the type of object, controls what kind of information you get. If I select a block object, for example, it tells me it is a block reference object, gives me information about that. If I select a piece of text, which I don't even think I have anywhere on this drawing, I don't. So everything in here is blocks and line geometry. If I come back over here to this guy, when I select a piece of text, it tells me layer control, the text information. So I've got the contents, the style, annotated or not, even the text height, which I can dynamically control from here as, again, well, geometry information associated with that text. Let's see, what else do we got? Oh, layer groups. Let's look at some layer groups real quick. So one thing with layer groups, talked about layers a little bit with the layers property palette, and you can create a set of group filters. There's various reasons you might want to do this. what I'm looking at here is a plant layout drawing. Well, what if I wanted to only see the layers that make up the actual property structure? So I don't want any machines, personnel, product, that kind of thing. So I'm going to make a new layer group filter. I'm going to right click on all, new group filter, give it a name. I'll just say property, keep it kind of generic. So there's nothing in here yet. I'm going to go back to the all filter or the all unused, either one you want to work with. And I'm going to use the control key and select the different layers that represent the property structure. So that's going to be things like building walls, column pillars, concrete walls, fence lines, and light poles. And I think that's probably, well, we are looking at property, so I'll go ahead and include the navigational star. So with those layers selected, all I need to do is drag and drop to that property layer group. Now, when I go to that layer group, I can right click on it, choose isolate group in all viewports. It's going to give me a warning about any layers that can't be frozen or turned off or anything like that. Go ahead and say okay, close the palette, and that's what you get. Those are the layers from that group. Basically what it has done is it has gone through and it has frozen all of the other layers in your layer manager. You can get them all back by simply using thaw all layers, and that brings them all back. Your layer group filter is still there if you ever need to use it. The interface across the bottom for this status bar, there's a lot of things down here. And we've seen some new installs in various versions where for whatever reason, some of these items might not show up. It could be because it was configured differently from an IT deployment, could be antivirus might have blocked some DLL from registering and it just turned off that item. You got a lot of stuff down here. You've got your coordinates, you've got your various function controls like OSNAP, dynamic input, things like that, annotative capability, workspace control. If you want to make sure you've got everything turned on, or for that fact, if you want to turn a few things off, in the bottom right-hand corner, there's 3 horizontal bars. If you click on that set of bars, it brings up this menu that allows you to pick and choose the items from those icons. So if you think you might be missing something, go right here, make sure everything is checked. Or if you want to clean it up, kind of, get rid of some things you don't use, you can turn those items off here. Another very handy tip for interfacing with AutoCAD, interfacing with your drawing, is when you zoom in, you get close to something, and you want to get all the way back out. So there's a couple of ways to do it. Obviously, you've got Z, enter, A, enter. That's zoom all. That will take you all the way back out. You could also go to the view ribbon and use your zoom commands from there. One particular workflow that a lot of users don't know about is you can double click the middle mouse wheel without rolling it. It feels a little odd the first few times you do this, but do it a couple of times, you'll get the hang of it, and it's an instant zoom all, get you all the way back out. Now we're moving into different commands in AutoCAD that you may not be aware of. One command that I had to use a lot from a previous life was delete duplicates. So we've probably all seen this situation where you have a line on top of a line on top of a line 1,000 times. How do you get rid of all those duplicate lines? Well, on the home ribbon modify panel, there's a broom, or what looks like a broom. That is your delete duplicates command. So let's look at what we have. Right here, this looks like one line, but if I grip at it, the properties palette tells me there's 12 line segments on top of each other here. How do I unify all those into one? That's the delete duplicates command. So with that, I'll just select all of those, press enter. You can unify based on color, line type, things like that. control a tolerance, so how far off are they from each other. When I say OK, it now unifies all that geometry into one line. I say unify, it actually gets rid of the other pieces of geometry. So in a view situation like this, you know, there's two lines right there. There's one going all the way across and then one only going halfway. And that takes place all across the midline of this view. So delete duplicates can take care of that. If there are no duplicates, no harm, no foul. Nothing is done to that object. So now there's only one line there, one line there. The sketch command, boy, did I use this a lot in my past life. So the sketch command is a very old command, probably one of the oldest commands I'm talking about. And what it allows you to do is freehand sketch any shape. You're not using lines, arcs, circles. You're just moving your mouse and it's creating geometry where you move it. The sketch command does have a tolerance value down here. Let me turn on dynamic input so we can see that. I don't think there's an icon for the sketch command. It's I've only known it to be a keyboard command. There may be an icon, I've just not seen it. So with the tolerance, you're basically telling it, or sorry, with the increment, you're telling it how long of a line segment do you want. So I've got mine set to 1/1000th of an inch. So I could change that if I want, but that's plenty enough for what I need. What I'm looking at is the surface of a casting, and they want to see how much of this surface has defect area on it. So what you can do is you can zoom in, of course, scan your picture and get it scaled accordingly, zoom in, and then you can just use the sketch command and you can outline your shape area. Now you can connect the endpoints or you can zoom in and manually do it. I prefer to use this method. So there's my outline. Right now, all it is a series of line segments. That's it. But I can use the Polyline edit command, pick one of those segments, convert it to a polyline, and choose to join it to the other segments. And it creates a closed polyline object that I now get an area for that polyline object. So I can tell them it's 0.85 square, whatever units we're looking at, square inches in this case, for that defect area. Another command is construction lines or X lines. So in here, I've got a construction lines layer. It's a very pale color and it has a dotted line type. That layer is also set to not print. But if I did accidentally print it because it's a pale color and a dotted line type, if I try to print it in color, it's probably not going to show up. But for construction lines, they help you go back to the old school drafting view layout, if you will. So you want to line up your views using construction lines. You can lay out one construction line at 45 degrees, then use construction line to lay out your other view orientation and your other view size. Now I can just switch over to my object, snap, use my line command, reference the intersections, and now I have the correct height and width from my other two views. And get rid of those because they do clutter up the display, or at least turn that layer off. Now let's switch over to an old school method of inputting the geometry. So you have dynamic input, which puts the command line at your cursor for most commands in AutoCAD. So if I create a line segment and I want it to be at a particular length or a particular angle, this is what dynamic input allows you to do, is cycle between those values. So let's say I wanted to create a center line from the center of that, and I have to create it at 207 degrees. Well, with dynamic input, it measures the angle shortest distance to 0. So when I get over here at 180, as soon as I cross 180, it goes the other way. I can plug in 207. That's fine. If I just plug in 207, it will create the line at 270 degrees. There are a handful of commands that dynamic input can sometimes throw off the picks and clicks. Not many, just a handful. Plus, if your habit is to not have it turned on, this can be a little bit tricky to do something like this. Because with dynamic input turned off, you've lost that feedback. So how do I tell it to go 207 degrees? There's a very old school way of entering that information. First, you're going to start out by saying at, so use the at symbol, and that basically says at my last point. That's going to be the center point. That was the last point I picked. Go whatever units, mine is going to be 10. Then you're going to use the less than symbol, and that says at this angle or angle control. So now if I type in 207, I get that line 10 units long at an angle of 207. That's the old school way before dynamic input was created. Going back to layers real quick, let's talk about LayerWalk. So in this situation with this very massive plant layout, how do we know what is where? There's quite a few layers in here. Actually, that's not all of them. Let me get back to all of them. There we go. So there's a lot of different layers in here. And how do we determine what is where? You can manually go through here and turn these off and freeze them and do it the old school way, yes. But there's an easier way. If I expand the layers panel, there's an icon down here with a set of footprints. That's your layer walk. What layer walk allows you to do is it brings up this interface to say, okay, all of these layers are selected. If I select building walls, that's the only one that is shown. If I select, using the control key, building walls and column pillars, those are the only two layers shown. So now the way the command works by default is when you close it, it returns all the layers back to what they were. So it restores them to the previous state. But there is a checkbox in there that if you turn that off, it will keep whatever you have selected. So if I do building walls, pillars, let's do light poles and fences and concrete. That's part of it too. So down here at the bottom, if I uncheck restore on exit and I hit close, just prompts me and says, are you sure you want to do this? You could have some layers that can't be turned off or frozen. Continue. It leaves you with that display. Now, basically what it did to all of those layers is it just turned them off. So the way you get them back is there's a handy little icon right here that turns on all layers, and that brings everything back. Another command is the divide command. So with the divide command, what it will do is it will take your object and break it up into however many segments you want. So I like to do this with layer 0. Divide, I believe it's under modify, but I usually just type it in. So with the divide command, turn dynamic input back on real quick. When you select your object, it's asking you how many segments you want. So if I want 4 segments, if I want this line segment divided up into 4 segments, it puts a point node at each segment location, but it does not actually break up the geometry. The line segment as an object still exists as a whole object. It doesn't break it up. So it's not a combination of the break command. All it really does is put these node points at those locations. It works on circles and arcs as well. Plug in your number of segments. Now, when you get to something like this, you've got 3 arcs making up that curvature. And in the center, I've used Polyline Edit, and I've connected all 3 of those arcs into one contiguous polyline. If it's one polyline like this, you can still use the divide command and break it up into those 10, 8, 12, however many segments you need. And these are equal distant segments between those node points. All right, now let's look at some command options. Fillet and trim, here's one that, or fillet and chamfer, here's one that goes missed a lot. So in a situation, whether you're using fillet or chamfer, both of them function in this matter. If I start the fillet command and I plug in a radius, whatever that radius might be, I apply my radius. Well, try again. Doggone you. Did I pick the wrong one? Radius, thank you. There we go. So I plug in that radius, whatever that might be, choose my objects. Now in this situation, what if I needed to just bring these to a sharp corner? Well, you can use a radius of 0 or a chamfer distance of 0. That will work perfectly fine. But what you just did is you basically erased the previous setting you had. What if that's a setting you needed to keep? Maybe it's a unique radius that you needed to keep or a unique chamfer distance. By changing that radius or that distance value to 0, you just blew that away. Well, there's a way you can keep it. So right now it's keeping that previous value I had because I used undo to get back to where I was. So it's got that previous value. I can keep that value if I hold down the Shift key. Holding down the Shift key and selecting your geometry defaults to a temporary value of 0. As soon as you complete that command, come back in here and restart, your original setting is still there. So that works in both the fillet and the chamfer command. Now we're going to talk about trim and extend, and this is a good command to show the fencing. So with trimming, obviously I want to get rid of these pieces up here, so I can just use a fence line, come across, select all of them, they're gone. Then I have to come up here and hit extend and do the same thing across the bottom. Okay, that is it's fast, but it's not fast enough. So depending on which one you start does not matter. You can start with trim, you can start with extend. Invoke that operation, hold down the Shift key, and now it swaps to the other command. So if you're in trim, you hold down the Shift key, trim becomes extend. And going the other way, if you started with extend, hold down the Shift key, extend becomes trim. That's a lot faster than having to switch to another command. Let's talk about scale reference. So I have a 3D printer, and my daughter has asked me for some additional clothes hangers for her Barbie dresses. So I've gone into production mode. I've got to draw out that shape so that it fits right and she can use it. How do I get this to the right size? This is obviously just a picture taken with my phone. I've got the hanger, I've got a ruler for a size reference. It's a little bit skewed, but it'll work. And if I run a distance calculation, it now shows me the distance is about 4.6 inches. Okay, that's way too big. I need to get this scaled accordingly. So what I've done is I've put 2 lines right on top of the inch marks of the ruler, and I'm going to scale it down. So when I use the scale command, pick my base point. Now at this point, I could try to run some math calculations and figure that out, or I can simply right click, choose reference. My reference, I can either type in a number or I can pick objects. So I'm going to say my reference distance is the distance between these 2 endpoints, the 4.6 inches. Now what's my new value for that? 1.0, and I always add a bunch of zeros to eliminate any kind of rounding error. So it scales it down. So now when I come in here and I run a distance calc, we're at 1 inch. The same thing can be done anytime you're inserting blocks that you might have downloaded from a website. They could come in too large or too small. You know, standard bathtub we know is 5 foot. So I need this guy to be 5 feet. Scale command is going to be used again. Select the object. select my base point. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is what I did previously. I'm going to right click, choose reference. My reference is going to be that vertical edge of the bathtub. So I'm going to use endpoints, pick that edge. Now, here's where it changes from previously. I'm going to right click again and choose points. It would make more sense if it said match points. But when I choose points, I can now pick 2 additional points, and it's going to match the previous point selection with the new point selection. I'm going to say from that midpoint to that midpoint, and now it's dead on 60 inches. Similarly, there's an option for rotate that works much the same way. So with a rotate, if we need to rotate this cubicle, have this long wall of the cubicle match up with this angular wall of the building, yeah, you could take dimensions and get those numbers and do it that way. Or with the rotate command, go ahead and pick your objects, pick your base point. Now at this time, I'm going to right click, choose reference. I'm going to pick 2 points on my geometry that define my reference angle. That's going to be the endpoint down at the bottom and the endpoint up at the top. You'll see it changes your anchor alignment for the rotate. Again, like we did a second ago, I'm going to right click and choose points. Now I'm going to match it up with the points that I want it to align with. So as I move it into place, they are perfectly aligned. One of the OSNAPs or object snaps that tend to go unused, but is incredibly handy, is midpoint between 2 points. So let's say I needed to move this particular view and I needed to reference the midpoint between these 2 points, but not over here. I don't need that midpoint. I need it out here on this edge. Now I could use object track like you're seeing. Get a lot of users that still aren't very comfortable using object track, but it will work. The other thing you can do is you can use the Shift right click mid between 2 points. When I choose that and I just choose the 2 endpoints, it is now anchored. Let me turn off dynamic input so you can see it clearly. It is now anchored at the midpoint between those 2 points in space. And now I can relocate it for proper alignment or things like that. Hyperlinks. Let's talk about hyperlinks. So any object in AutoCAD can have hyperlinks associated to it, whether it's a block, a piece of text, or just a piece of simple line geometry. When I look at this text and look at the properties of it, you'll see there is a hyperlink field. I'm going to hold down Control and click on that text, and it opens up whatever that hyperlink was. In this case, it opens up another drawing. In the case of something like a shop layout, you can actually use hyperlinks and link to a manufacturer's website. Gives you details of the machine, brochure for the machine. You could also, bring back my AutoCAD here. You could also link to another file, like you saw it linked to a drawing file. This time I've linked it to a company spreadsheet that gives me the machine, some capabilities of the machine, and what jobs might be run on that machine. The way to build a hyperlink is you simply select the object, whatever that object is. In this case, I'm just going to zoom in and use one of these lines of the guardrail. Select that object. Over in the Properties palette, on the hyperlink field, just click the Edit Hyperlink box and you can link it to a file or to a web page. In order to activate that hyperlink, you simply hold down the Control key and click that geometry, and it will open that hyperlink in either another window, Internet window, AutoCAD window, or the other application in the case of the Excel file. Now let's talk about Polyline line type generation, another command option. So we've got 3 different hidden lines here, and you'll notice the hidden line dash length. This particular one here is just a regular arc object They are not connected, so you've got this incredibly long hidden line dash where they connect. So at the endpoints, it does a miscalculation on the line type. If you join these into a polyline, the default option you'll get is this one on the outside. With this particular one, you still get that longer dash because there's an option in the polyline properties that has to be turned on. That's what this one has here. When I do a grip edit on that and go to the properties palette, over here at the very bottom, there's an item called line type generation. It's enabled. If I disable it, you can see cycling between it, the change. So with it enabled, I get a more accurate line type generation. And with it turned off, I don't. One more quick section here, and we're going to be ending it out. Selections. So there's a way to kind of diagnose your hatches whenever you have a hatch that won't work. Case in point, this guy right here. If I try to create a hatch in that area, it's hatching a bunch of stuff that does not need to be hatched. Why is it doing that? Well, there's a gap somewhere in here that I've got to take care of. How do I find that gap? There are some capabilities with AutoCAD. It will try to isolate and identify those gaps. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But what you can do manually is make a grid. Just break your area up into different quadrants, different sections, and you'll notice real quick, where's the problem? Identifies that area. So now you can zoom in and say, okay, what's the problem? Well, it's right there. You've got a gap. So now I can just extend that up, close that gap. Let's check the other one, make sure it's still working. That works, that works, that works. Another problem there. So there's two problems in this geometry, and you can further isolate it there if you wanted to draw more lines and make a bigger grid to further isolate and locate the issue. It's right here. There's another gap. Close that one up, delete my grid lines, and now it should work perfectly. So there's a little tip for identifying areas, problem areas of a hatch. Crossing window versus window select comes up a lot. So the difference between them is not only color, but how it's selected. Let me go back to the hatch one. That was a good one to show that. So a crossing window or a window select. Window select is left click, release, move to the right, whether you go up or down. That is a window select. It has a blue highlight by default. Crossing select is left click, release, move to the left, whether you go up and down. The difference between these is what it selects. So with a window select, the object has to be entirely within that window in order to be selected. So we've got 3 vertical lines there that are selected, but notice the horizontal lines are not being selected, and there's 1 vertical line at the bottom not being selected. So if I use erase, that's the only ones that it applies to. If I use a crossing window, now it's simply a matter of what does that window touch, and that's all it takes. Even the slightest little contact, and that item is selected. So now everything is gone. Let's see. P for previous, L for last, A for all. All right, so erase is another good one for this. If I want to select everything and erase it, ALL gets rid of it. Start your command, bring that back, start your command, type in ALL, and it's all gone. What about P for previous and L for last? What's the difference there? Well, here's the difference. I'm going to create a circle, and then I'm going to move that I-beam. Now, if I do an E for erase and I press L, it's going to select the last object I created. That's the circle. If I do E for erase and P for previous, it's going to select the last set of objects I selected. That's the I-beam. This can get tricky if you use the copy command. So now when I do E for erase and I say L for last, you would think it's the circle. It's not. It's the bottom edge of that I-beam because the copy command created that I-beam. So that can get a little tricky. Quick select is a filtering option in the properties palette. So back here in the plant layout, if you're looking at the properties palette, the top right icon is your quick select. This allows you to look through the entire drawing for various objects that meet certain conditions. A good example, if you're looking for any line segments that have a length that is greater than, we'll say 144 inches, 12 feet. Press enter and it will select all of the objects that fit that, and the properties palette will tell you how many. There's 446. You could also use it to locate certain blocks. So let's look for a particular block reference that has a name equal to, and we're going to say the light poles. How many light pole blocks do we have out here? Say okay. It puts a grip edit on all the light poles, and it tells me in the properties palette there are 7. And the last thing to look at is the different grip types that you get when you select items. So the top line segment is just that. It's a standard line segment. Whereas the bottom one is a polyline segment. Notice the different grips. The endpoint grips of both of these work identical, but the midpoint grip is a little bit different. With both of them, you can relocate the object by selecting that midpoint grip. But with the polyline, if you hover over it, you get a flyout menu where you can add that as a vertex and give it a corner condition. Same, you can also hover and convert it to an arc. Likewise, with a standard arc versus a polyline arc, I can take that midpoint grip and convert that polyline arc back to a line segment. Rectangular shapes, this is just a series of 4 standard line segments. This one is created using the rectangle command. The rectangle command creates a polyline object, and those same capabilities apply, where you can convert to vertexes, convert to arcs, change the locations of them, things like that. Circle is a circle is a circle. You're only going to get 5 grips no matter what. There's no such thing as a polyline circle. You can have some polyline arcs that are closed up to where they look like a circle, but they will not have 5 grips. Okay, so now we're going to get to a little bit of nostalgia real quick. This only applies to AutoCAD, and this is the only command in all of this that only applies to AutoCAD. First, let me switch over to a different colored theme to make it easier to see. There's a command called Screenmenu. It used to be turned on by default. It's been turned off for a number of years, but you can kind of revive it. Use the command redefine, type in Screenmenu, it's reactivated. Now when I type in the Screenmenu command, it's an on-off switch. So 0 is turned off, 1 is turned on, and I have my trusty old AutoCAD DOS Screenmenu. Again, this is just for nostalgia purposes. It's not kept up to date, so there's a lot of commands that are missing from this, but it has all the functionality of old school DOS interface. So if you're feeling nostalgic and want to go back to it, it's still there. A couple more commands. One that comes up quite a bit, and again, I think this is related to antivirus and firewall settings, kind of changing things in the registry. There's a command called FILEDIA. What that controls is the display of dialog boxes like the open command, new, or save as. If that is set to 1, then your dialog boxes will display as such. If FILEDIA is set to 0, no dialog box gets displayed and it reverts back to a command line interface. So again, we've seen situations where antivirus and firewalls can sometimes mess with those settings. and either change them or turn them off during an install. Real easy to get it back on. File DIA, set it to 1, brings back your dialog boxes. And then the last little bit is in the CUI. So in here, you can come in and control a lot of commands and interfaces and command structures with AutoCAD. It's a big area to be poking around in, so be careful. But one thing you can do is you got a lot of drawings open, you're ready to get out of there for the day, and what do? Close, save, yes, save, yes, save. It's just monotonous. So instead of going through all that, you can make your own custom icon, and it will do it all for you. I've created one called 5 o'clock. And for that icon, the macro pulls up 2 commands. First command is save all. Second command is close all. So whether it's, you know, a fire alarm that somebody pulled, or it's 5 o'clock, you're ready to get out the door, all you got to do is come up here, click that drawing, walk away. All of them are being saved and closed as you're running out the building. And with that, I will open it back up for Q&A. Dan, how's our Q&A poll window looking?
Yeah, looking pretty good. I guess if anybody's got any other questions, I've been answering them as they've been coming in. If you got anything else, feel free to type it in now. Let's see here. Yeah, there might have been 1 or 2 that I couldn't answer as they were coming in. So if we didn't get you an answer today, we will get a report and we will for sure follow up.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about the web meetings is if a question happens to come in as we're signing off, the web meeting utility does grab it and we do get that question afterwards. So we can definitely follow back up with you. Will you send out that command for save all and close all? I kind of thought that would be a big hit. Yeah, I think what we'll do is we'll post that. I'll get with Ashley and see if we can figure out how to post that as part of, say, the recording description or something like that. I figured that would come up quite a bit. Understanding is that save all is part of the Express tools, so during installation, Express tools must be loaded. That is a very good point, very good catch. A lot of IT departments do not know to install the Express tools command set. And I believe with 2024, Dan, you might back me up or correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that turned on by default during the install? I don't remember having to pick it. I don't remember having to turn that on. I think it was already there.
I saw it on my last install, but I can't remember if it was.
So, I mean, that's a good point. If it's not installed by your IT, you can get with your IT and they can just run the installer again and add it. The video link will be shared. Ashley, I believe there's an email list that goes out with a link to the video. Am I correct on that?
Yes, we'll send an email tomorrow, which will have the link that you can watch again.
Email address so I can ask my questions. I'm guessing, Ashley, I'm gonna chime you in again. I'm guessing they can interface and ask questions in a general mailbox.
That's right. You can just reach out to our contact us on our website, or you can reply to that confirmation or reminder email you received for this webcast, and it will come to us and we can get your questions answered.
Oh, I just had one. Is there a way to convert back to old and I lost it? I don't know if that was old interface or what it was. I'm looking for it now. Accidentally sorted by a different column. Dan, if you find that one.
Was it the one, the old way of creating icon other than through the CUI? or let me see, would it be?
Oh, I found it. Is there a way to convert back to my old way from CUI? What old way are we talking about? There's a lot of legacy stuff that is still capable with AutoCAD. There's a very old DOS thing called slides. They are still there. They are very buried. It takes a few steps to get to them, but you can still use slides. So there may be a way of getting back to what you're wanting to do. We would need more specifics on something like that. All right, I don't see any new ones coming in. Any questions that did not get addressed? Again, we're gonna take those offline and we'll get those responses sent back to you. I appreciate everyone signing in for today's webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it informative, and have a great day.
Bye, everyone.